It is another wonderful time on television, and thanks for joining us on the program Africa Discourse. My name is Evan Sunokuge. Today on the show, we're going to be looking at developmental issues in Africa, and of course, how we got here as a continent. What efforts are being taken to ensure that these issues are things that, they become a thing of the past, while other continents of the world have made major steps in ensuring that problems, political problems, economic problems, and of course issues that have to do with climate change and all that have become a thing of the past. Africa as a continent seems to still be wallowing in all the problems and all the issues. And we understand that the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDG goals and all that are issues that are so pertinent in the minds of world leaders. But where is Africa in all this? Now, you hear people talk about climate change as a major problem in Africa. And of course, you hear people also talk about hunger and malnutrition, healthcare, peacekeeping for some parts of the continent, and also international criminal tribunal issues, the colonization issues, and economic issues. All these are issues that have been bedeviling Africa as a continent. The big question that we ask is, what is the cause? How did we get here? So we're going to be doing all that today on the program in the next couple of minutes, Africa Discourse on independent television. And of course, to do justice to all this today, we are so privileged to have a foremost Islamic scholar and of course a lecturer with the University of Benin here in Benin City. Nuruddin Asulugi is our guest on the program today. So welcome to the program, Africa Discourse.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, viewers. I'm my lecturer.
All right, so when we're talking about developmental issues in Africa, I think right from, say, 1945, after the Second World War and all that, that's when we can actually say that the issues started. But where do we start from? What is our impressions when we talk about issues, developmental issues in Africa, Nuruddin?
Well, we want to begin by saying that Africa is a blessed continent in terms of the mineral and human resources. So naturally, if you had these two things, two core things that are central to the whole issue of development, you would say the continent was good to go. But sadly, we are not there. We are not even anywhere near there. The reasons why we are not there are legion. You can't even exhaust them. But basically, they are issues that are self-inflicted. It does not matter how much we find ravishment in self-denial, how much we titillate ourselves with mendacious tales as to how Europe or any other person had underdeveloped us. All of that would not happen if we had not played a participatory role, a very key, a very central role to making that to happen. I'll give you one clear example. By 1960, when Nigeria, for example, became independent, what was said of Nigeria, given all the indices, all the factors that would conduce to growth and ultimate development, Nigeria was described as one that was the potential giant of Africa because we had enormous resources, we had human resources, human beings whose love for celebration was both deep and infectious. 5 years after we became independent was when South Korea got our independence. South Korea was seen as a country that was not going to see the break light of Nigeria, given the resources that we have and the destitution of it that South Korea suffered. Purely an agrarian society, a society that was poverty-stricken and stuff like that. But here we are today, there is a reversal of role that is not even comparable, because you'll be insulting the South Korean society if you were to do all of that. But what had happened was that we have come to the appreciation of the fact that human resource and material resource themselves would not ordinarily translate to development. You require a leadership that is visionary, a leadership that is inoculated against being liquorish, a leadership that is not egocentric, a leadership that is not narcissistic. You needed all these qualities in the one who would drive the process that will precipitate growth and ultimate development. That had been seriously lacking within the Nigerian space. And so what we have had is, rather than use all of these resources that nature or providence had blessed us with, what we had done was to regale, to find infantile ravishment or luxuriating in the defecation of resources that would have gone into the development of the society. So we are no giant anywhere, and unfortunately too is the fact that these resources, quite a number of them are finite. It would be, what you gain out of it, of course, would be the end into which they were put in a way that would encourage sustainable development, in a way that would bring about an enlargement of the growth of the society to the benefit of the vast majority, if not the totality, of the citizenry. But what we have had over time is the coagulation of resources that would have gone into development in the hands of very insignificant few, and who too, unfortunately, regale in conspicuous consumption. They are not deployed into things that would enhance or deepen development, unlike what you found in the South Korean society. I'll give you one clear example. In South Korea, the leadership had articulated that, yes, there are a number of issues. What was it exactly we needed? That if we touched that particular thing, it will galvanize every other thing. It will have a bad wagon effect. What was it that would represent, that would bring about, you bringing about that which will affect the critical mass? And South Korea just discovered that you needed to invest in education. And South Korea was not niggardly. South Korea was extravagant in investing in education. So much so that those who went to acquired education, not literacy. Because in our own context, you didn't need to be educated. All that you needed was to have literacy that gives you the peg for admission into the circle where you too can be qualified to peculate or defecate resources for the common good. Because what education would ordinarily have done, that it had done in society where that had truly taken place, of course, was the taming and domestication of proclivities that want to make you take, not to bring about an enlargement of that which makes life meaningful for people. So we have had all of these challenges. If you were to take Nigeria as a condensed metaphor for the rest of Africa, that basically had been what had happened. So it is a place where people had aspired to a position of leadership, not on the conviction that they had something to offer, but because they just wanted to be there in order that they will acquire the authority, the area of office that enables them to have access to the coffer of government.
Okay. Now, some analysts we ascribe to leadership challenges to the incursions that the Western world seems to have made into leadership space. I don't know if you want to reason.
Well, for me, it's a very lame argument. A very lame argument. I'll tell you, no one person gets manipulated except the individual is first susceptible to manipulation. So you don't talk about the ultimate manipulation of one who ordinarily had demonstrated susceptibility to manipulation. So if you didn't make yourself available, that obviously would not happen. So when they say they have done all of the things they did, I'll tell you most frankly, even in the so-called Western world, what had played out or had worked there, because human nature obviously the same, is that you have those fellows who have demonstrated the capacity, the resilience to be able to say, we will challenge status quo that does not conduce to bringing about development that will benefit the large majority. If you take away those, I mean, for example, we've been independent for 64 years now. So if we've been independent for 64 years, how come nothing had fundamentally changed? The infrastructures are not there. We don't have good network of roads. You can't talk about security even when humongous amount of money is being expended. We have refineries that would not work anywhere. They are not working, in spite of the fact that billions are used to sustain persons there who are unproductive, who are uncreative, who contribute nothing to the system. And so you will not attribute all of this, as it were, to what the Western whatever world had done, because these are self-inflicted whatever pains. Now, when we choose to be lean in integrity, when we choose to make ourselves available to be manipulated to undermine the system, you don't blame that on the one. You know, when the colonial masters, for example, came, I'll take even back to the era of slavery, when those fellows had to deal with the issue of slavery, they didn't deal with the issue of slavery because they suddenly gained some degree or amount of compassion. That was basically not what happened. Slavery was no longer paying, because do not forget that the North and the South in the United States of America had to go to war. The South was responsible for bringing in the slaves, but the benefit was appropriated by the North. And so when they went to war, when Abraham Lincoln and the stuff had to do all of the things they didn't do that because they were altruistic. They didn't do that because they were filled with compassion, but because it was going to undermine the foundation of the American society. And so when one looked at all of this critically, wherever it had failed, wherever you found it not going the way they had always wanted it to go, it was because there were persons who were willing to sabotage it. There were persons who were willing to sabotage it. So for me, it's a lame excuse. It's a very barren one. It is infantile. It is one that is annoying when you say we are who we are because there is one master out there who says we can't develop. That is not correct. It's just an admission of the portroom that we are.
But if you look at the trajectory, most especially what has been going on recently, I mean, most African nations have been members of United Nations. Recently, we saw the BRICS nation coming up. More than 5 African nations have been members. Why other members seems to be making progress? These African nations are really not making the much desired progress that is expected. Now, is it a case of the fact that we are not learning, or the fact that we keep on making ourselves available to be used by this Western interest?
Exactly the point that had been made, that we make ourselves available. For those you say are making progress, what are the indices? What are those elements that had conduced in their favor to making the progress that they say they are making? Now, you cannot take Nigeria, for example. We have been involved in this struggle, wanting to play to the gallery that we are qualified, as it were, to be permanent member of the Security Council. Now, you ask the question. You want to be member of the Security Council, you want to be a permanent member. You are unable to secure your borders. You are unable to feed the people. The vast majority of the citizenry of this country ululating on account of inundation. And then you ask the question, what business would we have had with hunger? What business would we have had with hunger when we have arable lands? Plant anything, just forget a grain in your mouth. by the following, money is germinating. You don't need anything special for that to happen. You don't find that in a number of European countries. And yet we are hungry. How does one explain that? It is basically the issue of dealing with leadership that is not straightforward, leadership that is corny, leadership that takes the rest of us as imbeciles. All of the policies that are being put in place by government in order to deepen food production were self-centered, self-driven. Whether it was the OFM, Operation Feed the Nation, which for me was not accidental, it was not something fortuitous, that it was the same OFN of the one who was behind the policy, Operation Feed the Nation, that was the same OFN that started at about the same time of Obasanjo Farms Nigeria. They both were OFM, not accidental. There was the Land Use Act that enabled people who were in position of authority to corner vast arable land to themselves. Yes, they went into agri. Loans were taken from banks that were never paid back deliberately by those who should have been protective of this institution, who had the responsibility to make sure that this did not happen. And the peasant farmers will be required to come up with collateral that they will not be able to get, and so nothing. In the last days of Buhari, the agro farmers stuff and whatever, trillions were expended there. Right, but so the core farmer never had access to this money. Those who were government officials took this money, and a number of them had plenty of such money to be buying farms for hundreds of millions, wanting to run to be governors, to be this, to be that. Okay. So how do you grow? All right,
so what we're saying is that the challenges that we're going through as a continent are more of self-inflicting.
Obviously they
rather
are.
Than
they are.
interest.
They are.
Okay.
They are.
Now, the issues, in an attempt to actually understand these challenges, you can readily say more maybe political challenge. On the other hand, you say economic challenge. Then if you stretch it further, you begin to adduce them to our inability as a continent now to also really lay hold on the Sustainable Development Millennium Goals. This is 2024. And in another few years, I remember way back when I was much more younger, it was 1990. And by 1990, most nations of the world may have achieved about 50%, 60% of those Sustainable Development Goals. Most African nations were nowhere to be found. As we speak now, it's a Vision 2030. This is 2024. We have about 6 more years to go before it's 2030. The big question is, where is Africa in all of all this? So looking at all this, mirage of challenges, political challenge, economic challenge, inability to lay hold on Sustainable Millennium Development Goals, which one can we really say has brought us to our knees as a continent in Africa?
Well, like I said, the biggest challenge is it doesn't matter how much resources you have. If you do not have the capacity to deploy those resources in a way that will be productive, wasted. So the biggest challenge, of course, is that we have leadership who needed to galvanize other elements of development. And so because of this deficit in leadership, you needed a leadership that is patriotic, a leadership that is committed, a leadership that lives that which he or she represents. Once you don't have that, we have a fundamental problem. If we have the correct leadership, for example, I'll tell you most frankly that we would invest far more than the paltry sum that is being invested in education today. Our education is in a state of, total state of collapse. We just do not have it. It doesn't matter what the pretenses are. We do not have it. We don't have it. Just go around in the 21st century. Students are in school that are crowded, schools where buildings have no roof, schools where you do not have teachers, where you are lucky to find teachers. Those teachers are themselves in need of, education. They require to be taught. So what is it that they are giving? You can't ordinarily give what you do not have. And so when you look at the niggardliness that is shown on the part of leadership towards education, it automatically tells you that this is a society that is not ready to go anywhere. If we must change the narrative, it will mean, therefore, that we would have to invest and invest. No society. Because the quality of the people that you lead is a function of the quality of education they get. And once that happens, you can be sure that they are good to go. India had a projection that by year 2020 or 2022, they will have 100% literacy, whatever. By year 2018 or 2017, India was somewhere close to 90-something%. So I'm sure that by now, they're already there. That was a deliberate policy. So much so that wherever you turn today, they are everywhere. You don't want to access medicine. You know, there are Nigerians, including leadership, that go on health pilgrimage on a yearly basis to India, bringing billions of dollars of resources, siphoning them from here and taking them over there. You go to the UK, for every 3-4 doctors you probably would see, you may be finding an Indian doctor. You come to the IT world, you may find them. These are investments that are now bringing returns. And so when you look at what comes in by remittance from those in the diaspora to the Indian economy, you move around the Indian society, you hardly will find any tash house.
But let us be careful, Nuruddin, because even as we talk about India now, it appears that these Indians we're talking about, they still don't stay back home to utilize the education we are talking about. Because if you go to...
No, you said they don't stay back home to utilize what education?
Yeah, like what you rightly said, that if you go to UK, most...
no, when you say they do not stay back to utilize, they're going outside and bringing money into the country, into their economy, and they have people. There's no deficiency. If they didn't have it, you won't leave here to look for them in the UK or the US or in Canada. You will look for them in those places. You will not go to India. 80% of those in government who travel outside the shores of this country go to India to seek medical whatever. So if they were not there utilizing what they are, you won't find them there. You won't get there and they will be importing their men from Canada or whatever. You go to Egypt, they are the same persons you are most likely going to find there. Handling critical area of Medicare. That is a consequence of a deliberate investment in education by those who are in government. And so, massive agricultural development, resources that were committed to agriculture paid off. I am telling you, if we're serious-minded persons, a number of persons roaming the streets of this country will be behind the bars. Because in the last days of Buhari, huge, colossal amount of money was pumped into agric. There were religious institutions who took money in the name of cooperative, whatever, and, started buying big jeeps and building houses and stuff like that. They never went into agriculture. They never went for the purpose. There were those who were officials, whether they were permanent secretaries, they were directors who made millions of the same money that was supposed to put food on the table for the people. And so when you deal with people who have the issue of endemic poverty, how does growth? How do you, for example, the whole idea of 1 meal per day for a child in school, quality meal, that was brought in by Buhari, was because they had appreciated the critical position that when you are malnourished, assimilation becomes difficult, if not impossible. When a pregnant woman who is malnourished is suckling the baby, what is coming out? Absolutely nothing. If the baby gains anything, is the tightening, the strengthening of the muscle around the jaw region, because it's just struggling to bring out what is not there ab initio.
All right, let me pause here, Nuruddin. We'll come back to also this point, but quickly, let's go back to the issue of education, because I know that's your major concern. Now, I said something a while ago that one of the major challenges that we face in Africa is our inability to really lay hold on the Sustainable Development Millennium Goals, of which education is one of them. Now, you are from the university, I mean, from the highest study of learning, you know, as far as learning is concerned, education is concerned. Now, let's look at Nigeria. Let's situate it to Nigeria now. Now, Nigeria educational system now seems to be tilting towards not just educating the minds, but also educating the hands. I mean, we have entrepreneurship programs in our tertiary institutions and all that. And that seems to have been lacking in our educational journey. So now that we have this now, what is now left? What are the issues? What is the problem? I mean, that you still talk like this. What do you think are the issues?
You see, in countries like Japan, for example, if you were a primary school teacher, you consider it as one of the highest privileges. Ditto for secondary school. Because that is the point, that's the level where you are molding characters. Like Frederick Douglass had said, it is better to build strong men than to begin to mend broken men. That is the level at which they are molded. At the tertiary level, you are trying to mend broken bones. You are trying to reweave what had been broken,
So,
what had been poorly made. Now, having said this, when you say skills have been introduced.
now, Nuruddin, we're looking at education because you seem to be talking about that one of the major problems is our lack of proper education. You were trying to say that our education system in Nigeria and in most African countries is wrong from where we're starting. I think that was where you were trying to talk about.
Yeah. So when you talk about the skill acquisition, whatever, is it enough that you say, oh, well, we will now do entrepreneurial, whatever? What is the funding? What is the funding? What are the structures that are on ground for you to actualize that?
When you say funding, you mean the universities are setting up the learners after school?
Oh, you do that if there is no funding, how is it done? And who is going to, if I may ask, who is going to provide the leadership? Who is going to provide the instruction? What preparation do we have for all of this? These are things that are missing. And so you have that. Just like we had all of the beautiful policies about agri loans were given, who got what was not the issue, but do we have food on the table? We saw the pyramid of return of rice and all that. We can't buy rice. And so there are common you know, there are things we could do to deceive ourselves. But the reality keeps staring us in the face to say, hey, you are not where you should be. When you wake up from that dream, the reality confronts you and say, we have a major challenge, and until and unless we are prepared to don the wrapper of truth, face it squarely, we are not going nowhere.
So in all of all this that we've been saying now, the major cause of our challenges are self-inflicted.
Obviously they are.
So
because if you gave me money, and that money was supposed to fix the camera, and I don't fix the camera, I eat the money. And someone turns around to say, oh, somebody just didn't want that camera to work. That's why it's not working. Isn't that self-inflicted? Because at the end of the day, we will need that camera. It will not be available. Questions are never asked. Questions are only asked if the one who took the money had not been formally inducted into the circle of those who could take money without questioning. So you don't necessarily ask questions because a wrong had been committed or there was an infraction. It is that the person who did was an impostor. You only punish for being an impostor, not for the crime of taking what was supposed to be used for something which it was not used for. And so that is the major challenge that we have. Otherwise, we will not be where we are. I'll tell you, most frankly, recently there was a video that had gone viral. Whether it was for face saving on the part of the government of Akwa Ibom, that had ordered that the principal of that school goes on suspension or whatever. I don't know. But I would now ask, did we need to wait for that kind of video?
When we have millions out there?
When we have millions out there, when there were parents who had chosen to be insouciant, were these parents not interacting with their children? But rather than do that, what I would do is that, oh, I have a child there, well, don't worry, I'll bring more provisions to you. Yes, I could bring more provision, but what about those whose parents cannot bring provision for them? I'm indifferent about that. And whatever affects them ultimately would affect my child. If not now, later. I'll give you an example. I had 4 girls. They were in a federal government college. And that place was a sink of iniquity. And so we protested. We took advantage, leverage on the institutions that were provided to deal with the issue of corruption. We did not send in petitions that were anonymous. I was there physically, and I got all the assurances. One of them said, oh, we are just coming to town. This will be a test case. Oh, close to 10 years down the line, the perpetrator is retired, enjoying whatever he got from there. Nothing happened, absolutely nothing. But what these institutions will do is, what is my own in it? Rather than fight corruption, it is question of, oh, this is an opportunity for me to maximize. So I call you, Evans, there is this whatever against you. Whatever you still have left, let us negotiate what is mine. And when all of that happens, it is the entire system that will suffer. When the roads are not fixed or they are badly fixed, you can't tell who will drive there. You can't tell when there will be an emergency, you need to rush somebody. When hospitals are supposed to be stocked with the right drugs and we don't do that, you can't tell. When there is hunger in the land, like there is hunger now, yes, you could be rich enough to buy a bag of rice for whatever amount it is sold. But there are families out there that cannot buy. And once the parents, the head of the family, cannot feed the children, they lose the moral platform for control. And so when you talk to your child, for example, I'm the one talking to you, the child should be able to look back and say, yes, that is the one talking to me. There are consequences if I violated or disobeyed that. But he looks at you. You are not responsible for what I ate yesterday. You are not responsible for what I'm putting on. So you're just talking. Is it because there's this residue of respect I still have for you that you still so loquacious and tell me I'm the one talking to you? And so you have no control over that child. So in all of and when the child becomes a criminal, all of us who can buy one bag of rice for 1 million naira would not find the clover that is associated with eating rice. All right, because so in the dead of the night, we can't go to sleep.
So in all of this now, we are saying is that we have very loose institutions.
We don't have them, so we don't talk about them being loose. They are, the institutions are not there.
Yeah, but how do we begin to look at all this? Because whether we like it or not, institutions
yes. If we need to deal with all of this, there are critical institutions. Yeah. There are critical departments. 2 major departments you must have to deal with if we will get it right. We must fix the education sector. No 2 ways about that. We must fix the education sector. When we say fix the education sector, we say do it in a way that it is not a thing of patronage. You don't. I'll give you one clear example. In other client, when people are appointed, for example, as chairman of council, of university, or polytechnics, or colleges of education, it is a call to duty. When they are pro-chancellor, it is a call to duty. You are a traditional ruler, for example, you are made the pro-chancellor or whatever you are called of an institution, you are required what is being explained is that the institution will leverage on your influence, leverage on your experience and whatever to deepen the purpose for which it was created. So once it does not do that, you are a waste. But what do you find in most instances? They come and represent financial hemorrhage for the system. Once he's coming, he's a traditional ruler, he comes with a retinue palace chief and whatever, emirs and stuff like that, when they are returning, they return with cargoes paid for by the institution. So rather than bring, they are taken away. And so how does it grow? So you require people who, when they come in, they are coming to make sacrifices. They are coming to leverage, to state to their friends that we are here now. This is what is given. I want to leave a legacy. Come and build this structure. Come and do this. Come and do that. Then we must have the kind of institution that is capable of appreciating what the purpose. I have a phone. It doesn't matter whether my phone cost me ₦1 million to buy. Once I can make calls with it, I can receive calls with it, that phone is useless. I won't wear it as a necklace, no matter how beautiful it is. Yes, I could use it as calculator. I could use it. That is not the purpose for which I bought it. So every institution of learning, for example, was created for a purpose. Once it can serve that purpose, once it fails to serve that purpose, it is a trash. It's a garbage that should be taken away. Okay. So it doesn't matter how beautiful the structures are. Once you cannot produce men who are rich, robust in integrity and learning, men who have not allowed the emasculation of the space for critical thinking, men who can be contributing, men who can raise conversation around the issues of life in a way and manner that would deepen our sense of humanity, then that institution is useless.
So in other words, we seem to be lacking in leadership.
Obviously we are. We are at our level.
Nuruddin, how do we begin now to have the right leaders so that we can have right managers of our institution? How do we?
Yeah, you can have the right leadership when the people are ready to own the enterprise. But here we are not ready. The elections...
Or the people are not allowed.
No, who is not allowing them? I'll tell you most frankly, the last election that took place, the two recent elections in Edo and whatever,
yes.
And Ondo, people were making themselves available to say, pay me, I vote for you. Nobody was interested in what the consequences of all of that would be. And so, when they say that people will get the kind of leadership they deserve, it may not be too far from the truth. But you come to look at it on a much more wider scale or scope. You find that we celebrate those who oppress us. We celebrate those who shortchange us. We celebrate those who are lean in integrity. And so that basically is the problem. I could say to you, say, Evans, I know you. You are a good person. But you see, you want this office. Do you have the money? And so you ask, what is the relationship between me being good and me requiring money to run for an office when you know too well if I am there, I'll be rendering service. I'll be solicitous for your well-being. And so we have that challenge. But it comes back to the level. People will only give what they have. If there was sufficient education, true education, like I told you, is different. You could be professor emeritus, all that you have is literacy, not education. Because if I have the knowledge, in the true sense of the word, that there is a bomb here, that bomb will be detonated in the next 40 seconds. I won't be waiting for the door. The door may be too far. I will break this wall and I go out. That is because I have a knowledge that tells me that I will cease to live if I am here another 40 seconds. But when I trivialize it, yes, I will be gone. But it's a consequence of the fact that I didn't know the implication. Knowledge will give you all of that. Knowledge, of course, would make you appreciate what is called self-dignity. That will not make you. It explains why Gandhi it was, who was, excited, inebriated with excitement when he recovered an item of his that was stolen. And so someone was saying, what was this item? It could be replaced. He said, no. When it was stolen, the individual who stole it was declared missing in the human family, because you needed to be below a human being to steal. The real human would not steal. And when it returned, it was like that fellow had manumitted itself from that which was taking him away from that family. And so when you steal money, you cannot honestly do that if you still had education. You cannot cause resources to coagulate around you when you truly have education. You cannot, feel that you are in a state of clover when you find people ululating around you as a result of living a necessitous life. And you are located at the center. Your life, of course, will be one of solicitude for those category of persons. That's what education will drive you to doing. It explains why that even in the scripture, it says people will perish because they are not.
Leaders are not educated.
Obviously, they are not. What they have struggled for was to have the kind of literacy. When you find those who had it, like the Nkrumahs, Nkrumah was ready, for example, to hypothecate his position as the president of Ghana for a greater united Africa. He didn't want to be president of Ghana. If all that was going to be sacrificed was being president of Ghana, let any other person go. Take Tanzania President Nyerere, who after retirement, it was then they were thinking of building a house for him and say, we will bring X, Y, Z for you and all that. And he said, where do I put all of these things? Because he had no need for them. Only a sick person who is not educated will want to have all of it. Why would I, for example, have 10 billion in an account when everybody around me, including those who are relations, are navigating the heaving ocean of impecuniosity? So you find that it will not happen. Once the leadership is right, every other thing will follow. I give you one clear example. I have a cousin. Some couple of days ago, he said, hey, I have an issue. Somebody had given me a job which is purely a contractual job, but I have been arrested for not doing a job where the other person had not met his own part of the whatever. I have been arrested. Somewhere in the year was where he was arrested, brought to Oriedo Axis, to the area command. Then I asked the simple question, area command in Oriedo does not superintend in your axis, because there is an area command in Ikpobahi. But the person leveraging on an officer who is his friend, who is in Oriedo, and that fellow doing an act of illegality. But he does that because he knows there is a culture of impunity. Whom are you going to report him to?
Nobody.
Whom are you going to report it to? So you find an inspector who is in area command in Oriedo, in Oriedo axis, going to pick somebody for who is doing a job in a year that is covered most certainly by whatever. He crosses over to pick the person because he feels nothing will happen. You won't do that in society where people have education,
Right, so
where people have those
in
things
order
going
for all
for
this
them.
that we're saying now, the right leaders must be in the positions.
The right leaders must be in position, but you will not just get them by wishing that they are in position. We must galvanize the critical mass. Give education like we are doing now, hoping that someday it will percolate. Then we have it right.
All right, so I think because of time, I will just end it there. And we want to say a very big thank you to most aptitudes and most erudite Nuruddin Soloje for his eloquent presentation this afternoon. Now, the issues are so clear. When we talk about leadership problems in Africa, we're not talking about the Western world anymore. We're talking about our leaders in Africa. And there's no way these problems in Africa, will be eradicated if we continuously keep on having, leaders that are wanting in one way or the other in Africa. So that's just the way it is. We may say that, different literatures, you hear some tell you how Europe underdeveloped Africa, and of course how the Western world has made dangerous incursions into the leadership space in Africa. But from what Nuruddin said here, we give that permission, we give that leverage. So we need not to blame any person. We need to look inward as Africans, and that's the only way we can handle our problems. I want to say a very big thank you one more time, Nuruddin.
Thank you
for finding time to come on the show today. All right, so until same time and next week on this same station, Independent Television. My name is Evan Sunohugi. Goodbye and God bless you.